Hey, I'm Pottery Boy and this is Clayclass. I've been wanting to share a few more tutorials, tips and tricks on how to get better at clay as opposed to just 45-second show reels. So this is my very first episode, long format, and I'm just going to go over the basics of centering and hopefully throwing a mug or a cup shape. Hopefully going to be about a 10-minute vid, so enjoy. So, one thing before I start, I'm sorry about my lack of clothes. It's so hot in the studio, it's probably like 35 degrees here in Melbourne, so I apologize. Next time I promise I'll wear a t-shirt. Okay, to the clay. Start with a small bit of clay. The clay that you use, obviously you want something that's going to be good for throwing, so wherever you're purchasing your clay from, ask them. Be like, hey, I'm going to be using a wheel, I want something super soft, silky. This is recycled clay with all of our recycled clays from the studio. So all of the used clays at the studios go into like one big bin and then they get recycled into this. It's really nice for throwing, it's super soft, really good place to start. So I'm not gonna wedge my clay today because as beginners, I recommend just getting into it. You wanna get a feel for it, you don't wanna stress out too much about like the kneading process. Let's just get straight into the clay. So grab your clay, grab a piece about the size of like a standard tennis ball, and we're just gonna whack it. So rounding it over, you want a nice round, sort of like potato-like shape before we start. By the way, I hope everyone out there is having a lovely day. And if you're watching this, thanks so much for watching. All right, potato like this, throw it down. Most wheels have these beautiful sort of rings on them, so use those to guide you. Try and hit the middle. If you miss, don't worry, it doesn't matter. Missed just by a little bit. So if you miss by a little bit, you can just sort of like push it over until it is in the middle and just really make sure that it's as centered as possible now, as close to the middle of the wheel as possible now, because once you start spinning, if it's not, it's going to be really, really wild. So just make sure that it's locked in. If you throw it and it lands out here, and you may be a little bit, not so good athletically, just pick it up and put it into the middle. Once it's here, we're going to go all the way around and lock in. Just blending that clay to the wheel. It's only a really small amount. You don't need to blend in too much. It just stops any water getting underneath. And if water gets underneath, it sort of like slips and slides all the way around. Very annoying. So just make sure you lock it in. From here, wheel on. My wheel's already turned on. And our pottery stance is super important. So the way that you're seated makes a huge, huge difference. Right now, I'm in nice and close to my wheel. My legs are sort of like cuddling the wheel, which is great. Get nice and close and intimate with your wheel. You almost become one for the ceramic process. So get nice and close. If you're like back here and like, very far away, it's going to be challenging to control your clay. So get in nice and close. The closer in you are, the stronger you'll be, the easier it'll be. For me, I'm just going to test out my wheel. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a pedal just down here, easing on, easing off. Get a feel for your pedal before you start centering your clay. And then from here, we're going to go to the centering process. So we're going to create a cup. So it's one hand over the other, doesn't matter which hand, whatever you prefer, and then your thumbs are up. So I'll show you like this. So cup, thumbs up, cup. Got it? Dip my hands into my water. You want your clay to be very wet, slippery, moist. You want it to be really nice and feel nice in your hands. If it doesn't feel nice, add more water. You constantly got to be adding water every sort of like 10 or 15 seconds. So to add water, dipping the hands into our cup, placing that cup on the piece. My elbows are locked in, my chest is over my piece, and I'm just in a nice strong position. Really important that you're in a strong position. If you're not in a strong position, the clay is going to control you instead of you controlling the clay, and that's when things start to get a little wild. So again, cup, thumbs up, placing that cup on my piece. My elbows are locked in, chest over my piece, nice strong position. And here I'm going to slowly start to speed up to full speed. And once I reach full speed, I'll start to feel my hands that my clay is a little bit wobbly, moving side to side, back and forth. The reason why is because this piece is asymmetrical and uncentered, and the goal of the first set is to get it centered and symmetrical. Pretty much what that means is that the clay is right in the center of the wheel, and from there you have the best chance of making something symmetrical, which is going to be our goal. So to center our clay, both hands on, squeezing in with these meaty parts here. So I'm squeezing, and you can see as I squeeze in, my clay starts to grow up and get taller. we don't want to be doing this. We don't want to just lift right off. You want to make sure that every time you're squeezing and then guiding all the way to the top. Notice again my body posture, elbows locked in, chest over my piece, nice strong position. My hands are slow, but my wheel is fast. So gentle squeeze, get that clay moving, lifting up all the way off the top, really nice and slow until we have something which looks like this. At my studio, we call this a cone. Some of the studios might call it other things, but ideally you have something which is its thickest point at the bottom, thinnest point at the top. If it's a little wobbly, a little wacky, a little uneven, totally fine. No stress there, doesn't matter as long as we're getting some good height on it. Next step is we're gonna put both hands on, our thumbs are over the top. I might show you guys from the side. So thumbs up over the top, and then pretty much what we're gonna do is we're just gonna slowly press down. Very important with this step that our thumbs aren't going into the piece, they're over the top. So I'm slowly pressing down, slowly pressing down, slowly pressing down. Nice fast wheel, slow hands, until ideally we have something which looks kind of like this. At my studio, again, we call this a scone. So the terminology is cone to scone. Normally I say scone, doesn't work so well with my Aussie accent, but if you've got an English accent, cone to scone will work well. So obviously this looks a whole lot prettier than the piece was before, and if I put my hands on it, it feels a whole lot nicer. You know, there's not as much wobble side to side, it's not moving around, it looks a lot more symmetrical, so this is closer to being centered. Now, I'm gonna go up and down one more time just because it's not fully centered and it's still a little bit wobbly, so same thing, back, up and down, and you go up and down as many times as you need for the clay to feel nice in your hands. So again, gentle squeeze at the base, lifting up off the top, and you can see that this cone is a whole lot prettier than my previous one, a bit more uniform, a bit more symmetrical, a bit more even, and then again, thumbs over the top. And it's really important that when we're pressing with the thumb, instead of pressing from here, you're pressing from here. So if you watch the cone, you'll see that it's almost like I'm gently tilting that cone forward and allowing it to collapse slowly into itself. Ideally you do it with two hands, I just did it with one so you guys can see. So both hands are on, slowly pressing forward and down from the back of your hand. Notice my elbow, especially my left, is always locked in and steady. And I'm gonna bring this right down into a little scone. All right. 2 times, looks really good, feels really good, centered. When you're starting, it's probably gonna take you 20, 30, 40 times up and down to get it centered, so just keep practicing that motion of going up and going down. If you can get that, everything else is so much easier. All right, so that's step 1, get it centered. Step 2 is make a hole. I personally like to use my thumbs, and I also like to use the same hand placement. So again, it's our cup with our thumbs up, placing that on. My preferred thumb is resting on top, so you want a nice 90-degree angle with your thumb, kind of like this, and we're just pretty much gonna press down. So both hands on, thumb is slowly pressing down until we have a hole like this. I've left about 1 centimeter at the base. I think that's a pretty good place to start for you beginners out there. All right, that's it, make a hole. Pretty simple, not too challenging, that one. Step 3 is to open this out. So to do that, my thumb is on the inside, exact same hand placement again, guys. So cup, thumbs up, thumb on the inside, and I'm gonna go out towards my right. So I'm slowly lifting out towards my right, and this is gonna widen. So right now, this is maybe like the size of a 10-cent piece, and I want it to be the size of a 50-cent piece. That's in Australian terms. If you're from overseas, you want it to go from being like, you know, a small little coin to like about the size of a golf ball. So I'm lifting out towards my right, lifting out, lifting out, lifting out, lifting out, lifting out. Again, nice fast wheel, slow hands, until we have something like this. Cool? So, up and down, from the cone to the scone, make the hole, widen the hole. The 4th and final step, which I think is the most challenging, is our pulling up. I personally like to pull up with my sponge, so we're gonna do that today. So, take your time on this one, it's a little bit complicated. Make sure you get comfy in your grip before you start lifting up. Grab your sponge, create a little point. Don't make it too little though, make sure that there's a bit of sponge there. Dip it in your water. Press at about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Imagine your piece was a clock. 4:30, 5 o'clock is where you want to sit. 2 fingers from the left hand on the inside, and the left thumb is on the base. So left hand is kind of like a little chatterbox, we call it here at the studio. And really important that my thumbs here are touching. So 2 fingers on the inside, thumbs on the outside. 2 fingers on the inside, thumbs on the outside. All right, back to it. So once I'm set up here, really important that we slow down our wheel for the pulling. So you want to be going fast on all the other steps. This, nice and slow, maybe like 50% maximum. You can go slower if you like. And pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to gently squeeze in from both sides. So the inside fingers and the outside thumbs and sponge are going to gently squeeze, super duper gentle. And we're going to lift up slowly. So you can see both hands are lifting up towards the top, easing off on my pressure, bringing my fingers here together on the rim, cleaning, adding some more water, and we're just going to repeat that process. So again, squeeze from both sides, sponge here, gentle squeeze. You can see that rim of clay starting to create, and then I'm slowly lifting up all the way, bringing my fingers here together and cleaning off. And you'll see as I do that, my piece is going to slowly start to increase in height. It's very gradual, very slow. When you're beginning, you don't want the pieces to be moving too quickly, so just take your time, really focus on the feeling in your hands. It's super important to understand what the clay feels like and to be really conscious of, I suppose, how everything is feeling in your hands, because that's important. All right. So I'm working on my cylinder still, slowly squeezing and lifting up until it starts to feel thin, which we're getting. Again, you can see hands are moving really slowly, elbows are nice and strong. My left elbow is locked into my body, my right elbow is on my knee. And my cylinder is slowly building up, which is exactly what we want. Managing any wobbles that come up, because there will be wobbles, and just working all the way through. So, basic cup shape, my walls have thinned out a good amount, and I'm going to start playing around with cleaning this up and shaping a little bit more. We're not going to use any tools today because I think your hands are your best tools. Better to start with those guys and incorporate the tools later on. So I got this little volcano at the bottom, which I'm going to get rid of. To do that, I'm literally just going to bring my finger in and just start to take some of that back until we're looking a bit more like a cup base. You can also use your sponge, similar sort of way, just to smooth out that bottom. And then we're going to shape. So to shape this from being sort of like a thin cylinder to something a bit more like a cup, we're going to do the exact same thing as what we were doing before with our pulling, but instead of lifting directly up, we're actually going to guide slightly out towards the right. This is a little bit more advanced, maybe for you guys that have done a bit of throwing before. So gently applying slightly more pressure on the inside, and you can see that my cup is going to start to widen out. Guiding up with my sponge, again bringing this all the way to the top nice and slowly, and you can start to play around with your shape. So we'll go a little wider just so you guys can get a feel for it. So a lot more pressure on the inside than the outside, rounding off at the top, and we'll end up with a nice little cup. Alright, so beautiful little cup here, all thrown with the hands, no tools needed. Finishing this guy off, you can just run your sponge over the piece. Make sure there's no water on the inside either. You don't want that because that'll cause cracks later on, so make sure the inside is nice and dry. And then you can chop him off. Squeeze some water onto here. Grab your wire, thumbs nice and taut, and then slide underneath. Not all of the wheels out there have a nice big tray like this one that you could slide off onto, so you might need to pick it up if you have a Shimpo or a Brent or one of those wheels. But this is a beautiful Venco. Shout out to Venco. And I'm sliding all the way to my edge here, and then I'm going to pop it onto a tile, which is done. Well, hopefully that wasn't too boring. I enjoyed it. And I'll be back for Clayclass DOS 2 later on. I think I'm going to go for a bowl next. We'll go over the same principles. We'll keep it nice and simple. If you guys have any questions, also send me a message or just comment if you want to see a specific sort of tutorial, and I'll start playing around with some things for you guys. Thanks and love you. Thanks for listening.